You may think the first two Terminator films are pretty good. You may even love them. But I promise you, no matter how great you think they are, they're actually even better than that. Realizing just how good these films are has everything to do with how you watch them. The best way to watch them is, well, it's really the best way to watch any movie. Every time you rewatch a film, you try your best to view it as someone who hasn't seen it. Someone who doesn't know what's going to happen. But then again, with the Terminator films, even the people who haven't seen them still have sort of seen them. What I mean is that they're so ingrained in our culture that we've all sort of collectively memorized them. They're such massive cultural icons, even the people who haven't seen them still know the premise. When a film gets this popular, it's nearly impossible to view it as the original piece of art it was crafted to be. It becomes difficult to separate the film from its cultural impact. I guess for this video, I'm gonna give this separation my best shot. But before jumping into the first film, I'm gonna need your help. I need you to pretend that we're back in 1984. At the premiere showing of The Terminator, before anyone has spread the word about what it's about. Let's pretend we have no idea who the good guy is, or that there's a robot in it. Forget everything you know about it, and let's just go in blind. It's 2029, and the world has gone to hell. We see some futuristic vehicles fighting in some war. Machinery crushing human skulls. Clearly in this future, a lot of people have died. Text appears that gives us a little bit more info. The machines rose from the ashes of the nuclear fire. Their war to exterminate mankind had raged for decades, but the final battle would not be fought in the future. It would be fought here, in our present, tonight. This doesn't tell us a whole lot. If anything, it just leads to more questions. We cut to the title, and then we cut to another shot of machinery. While we assume this is another killer machine from the future, it's actually just normal construction machinery in the 1980s. Strange electricity fills the air. An obscured naked man appears on the ground. When we see this is Arnold, the machinery can be seen in the background. Ominous music plays as the man walks towards the city. At this point, we don't know who he is or what his goal is. All we know is that he looks intimidating. Arnold is confronted by some punks. One of them tries to stab Arnold, but he's only able to make a tiny scratch before Arnold shoves his fist into his chest. It's so fast, though, it could also seem like Arnold just stabbed him, but either way, we know that Arnold is incredibly strong and deadly. Right after Arnold steals the punk's clothes, another naked man spawns across town from another blast of electricity. This man isn't as ridiculously huge as Arnold, but we quickly learn that he is still dangerous. Once the cops chase after him for stealing the pants of a homeless man, he dispatches the cops, steals his gun, steals some clothes from a store, and even sneaks into a cop car to steal a shotgun. Much like the first naked man, we have no idea who his name is or what he's after. That is until he goes to a phone book and finds the name Sarah Connor. We cut to a woman on her way to work. Following most movie rules, we can assume that this woman has the name we just cut away from, but we don't know for sure. That is until she punches in on the time clock, and then, we do know for sure. We see her struggling at her job, and her friend at work tells her this.
Look at it this way, in 100 years, who's gonna care?
She couldn't be more correct. Arnold steals a car and steals some guns. He finds a phone book and also looks up the name Sarah Connor. There are 3 Sarah Connors in the phone book, but his finger focuses on the first. So far in this film, what we know is that both of the men that came out of this strange electricity are preparing an arsenal of weapons and are looking for a woman named Sarah Connor. Arnold goes to the address of the first Sarah Connor and immediately kills her. I love the emphasis on the laser sight. It was pretty advanced technology when this film came out, so it definitely gives off a sci-fi kind of vibe. I think this was very intentional for not just this reason, but also because it's similar to the eye of the Terminator robot, which is also very similar to the eye of Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's all kind of about the same thing here, which kind of leads me into one of the film's main messages. Considering it's about robots wiping out humanity, it's obviously a cautionary tale for rising technology. It's a warning for humans to not be so reliant on technology and to not let technology get away from them. But anyway, back to the movie. Near a construction site filled with machinery, the second man steals a car. The sights and sounds of the machines distract his attention. We see a close-up shot of the treads to one of these large machines. At first, we assume it belongs to the construction machinery in the 80s, but the shot tilts down and we see the skulls. We are back in the hellscape future. We see this man fighting in this war against the machines. Right as it seems he's about to be killed, he snaps out of these flashbacks. Playing in the radio on the car is an advertisement for some new piece of technology. Again, this series talks about machines and technology a lot.
Who was the enemy again?
A computer defense system built for...
Even Terminator 3 did this, but in a much less subtle way.
What's wrong with this thing?
I hate machines.
And that is the last time I will ever mention Terminator 3, I promise. Let's get back to the good one. Okay, so Ciara and her roommate Ginger get ready for a double date. Ciara accidentally tangles herself around Ginger's music-playing device, which was an advanced piece of technology by 80s standards. Unlike Ginger, who's completely hypnotized by her music, Ciara and technology don't get along. Also, notice what's on Ciara's shirt. 2 police detectives discover that 2 women named Sarah Connor have been murdered. This is news to the audience, too, because we only saw one Sarah Connor get murdered, but now apparently they've gotten 2 of them. Our stress here is just as real as the cops, who now know that they need to contact anyone else in the city who is named Sarah Connor. Ciara, being the anti-technology person that she is, hasn't bothered to check any of her messages on the answering machine, so Ginger checks for her. One of them is a message from her date, canceling on her. So Ciara decides to go out to the movies and have dinner alone, while Ginger and her boyfriend spend time together. As Ciara drives away, we see that one of the men is stalking her. Considering we just learned that all the other women in town with her name have been murdered, we can assume she's in trouble. The cops call Sarah's apartment, and they keep trying to call Sarah's apartment, but they keep getting the answering machine, which has like a little answering message that is, a nice touch.
Hi there. Ha ha ha, fooled you. You're talking to a machine, but don't be...
But anyway, Sarah's roommate Ginger never answers the call from the cops because, well, she's being hypnotized, controlled by her technology. Okay, you get it. While having dinner alone, Ciara hears that another woman named Sarah Connor has been murdered. This obviously causes her to panic. I mean, can you imagine that? Everyone around you with the same name as you has been killed? Like, that's... okay, I just want to take a second to point out how cool of a story this is, and just how perfectly paced all of this is. Like, we're about a half an hour into this film, and the audience, they are completely gripped. This is the definition of engaging. Anyway, Ciara runs to the phone to call the police, but of course, it doesn't work. The phone is out of order. Again, Ciara and technology don't get along. Ciara leaves the restaurant in search of a phone, still with one of the men stalking her. Ciara goes into a club down the road and notices that this man is following her. Arnold shows up to Ciara's apartment and attacks Ginger's boyfriend. Again, though, Ginger has no idea what's going on. She doesn't hear the fight because of her, again, reliance on technology. This leads to Arnold killing her. Ciara calls the apartment once she finds a phone at the bar, but Arnold is the only one who hears the message.
Hi there. Fooled you. You're talking to a machine, but...
Again, a great touch with that answering machine message. Anyway, in the message, Ciara says that she's at the Tech Noir Club, thus telling Arnold exactly where she is. Ciara also gets a hold of the cops on the phone, who tell her to stay put. A little while later, Arnold arrives at the club, but Ciara doesn't pay any attention to Arnold. She notices that the other man who's been following her is sitting across the bar and he's watching her. She is completely convinced that this is the man who wants to kill her, And we as an audience, well, I mean, maybe he's the one who killed the second Sarah. We never saw the second Sarah get killed. Maybe he is there to kill her. I mean, we don't know either. Arnold appears next to Sarah and puts that red laser on her head. But before he can pull the trigger, the other man blasts him with a shotgun multiple times at close range. Now, we've seen Arnold do some pretty incredible things, but no one can survive this many shotgun blasts to the torso, no matter how strong they may be. But Arnold gets right back up. Well, maybe he was wearing body armor. I mean, none of the shots hit him in the head after all. But then Arnold is shot again by the shotgun, this time with even more rounds and at even closer of a range. But the sound effects when he gets shot are different. We hear metal being shot when Arnold is hit. But still, Arnold gets right back up, and Sarah and this man who's shown himself to be her protector take off running. Now, before getting any further, I just want to talk about this scene. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite scenes in any movie. The attention to detail in everything, especially in this set, it's just amazing. The symbolism, everything about it, it's all so good. There are so many little things about this nightclub set that I feel are thematically, symbolically relevant. And I don't believe any of this is a coincidence. I believe this was definitely intended by the director because he had full control over the look of this club. What I mean here is that this set of this club wasn't pre-built. It wasn't a real club or a pre-existing thing that they could film at. This was designed and built and decorated specifically for this movie. So every little strip of red neon on the wall, all of that was intentional. It means something here. I mean, just look at the name. Even the name is relevant. Tech noir. Essentially, I mean, this word, it pretty much would define the genre of what this movie has been so far. Even the strobe lights and the red smoke clouding around the dancing crowd, even that has a purpose to it. Because if we listen to the song that's playing in the club that all of them are dancing to, the song's lyrics are about being on fire. Now, yes, clearly the song uses this imagery of burning to describe love or something like that. But for the film, under those red lights, surrounded by smoke with people thrashing about, it seems that it's trying to evoke the image of people literally burning. Because in the universe of this story, all of these people dancing at the clubs, all of the clubs and bars and fun locations like this, all of society is about to burn in a nuclear war. And then, of course, there's this shot right here, when Arnold spots Sarah from across the club. Decorating the wall behind him appears to be some sort of electrical transformers or something like that. A red beam connecting the two appears to go through Arnold's head, as if the red magic of technology is powering him, as if he is part of this machinery, as if he is machinery. Now, with this image in mind, let's get back to where we left off, with Arnold chasing after Sarah outside the nightclub. In this little sequence, for the first time in the film, we can see what Arnold sees. We get a point of view of Arnold's perspective, and it's like we are viewing the world through fancy cameras, through a computer, like these are the eyes of a machine. But Sarah and her protector, well, they manage to get into a car and speed away. And once they're far enough away from Arnold and finally a little safe, they begin to talk to each other. And in this conversation, the story starts to make sense.
My name is Connor. John Connor. Your son, Sarah.
See, Sarah is who we as the audience empathize with, and as Sarah learns what's going on, so do we. Sarah learns that the man trying to kill her is no man at all. He is a machine. She learns the reason she's being targeted is because her son will lead the fight against the machines in the future. Finally, once we are over 40 minutes into the film, Sarah and we as the audience can finally make sense of what's happening. The way the first half of this film paces its story, its mystery here, is just genius. But for most of us that watch this film, we will never experience it in its best form, because we know from the beginning that Arnold is an evil killer robot, and we know that Kyle is a good guy and why he's following Sarah and all of that. But really, if you just look at what the movie shows us, there's nothing to really indicate that Arnold is a robot. He just seems like he's a really tough, stoic dude. But then when we look through his point of view and we see him cutting through his skin and seeing this metal robot arm underneath it, like that's mind-blowing. following. That's a crazy twist, but unfortunately, it's a twist that is just sort of ruined by the movie being as culturally relevant as it is. But if we can take a look at the movie without all the knowledge, and instead consume it at the pace the film wants to feed it to us, we can see something amazing. Now, in terms of twists and pacing and world building and mysteries and all of that stuff, Terminator 2 sort of does something similar, but I mean, obviously it can't compare with what Terminator 1 does. But anyway, Terminator 2 still has a good twist. But again, before we get to what that is, before we dive into its story, let's pretend we know nothing. Let's forget everything we know about this film, okay? We are seeing Terminator 2 for the first time before anyone is talking about it. We haven't watched a trailer. We don't know anything. All we know is that Arnold is back, and he's playing another machine. Like the intro of the first film, in Terminator 2's intro, we again see this war between the machines and humans in the future. And for the first time, we see John Connor, the leader of the humans. We see him looking all cool and badass, looking stoically over the battlefield. Our narrator, who's the voice of Sarah Connor, tells us that the first Terminator sent back to kill her in the 80s failed, but that they also sent a second one in the 90s to kill John Connor as a boy. Now, like before, the humans managed to send someone to protect the Terminator's target. Going into this film, this is all we know. And so far, it seems that the story of this one, the second one, is going to be an exact copy of the first one. You just swap out a girl from the 80s with a young boy in the 90s. Again, like the first film, Arnold appears in a cloud of electricity next to large machines. He searches for clothes in a biker bar and makes quick work of anyone who resists. He is brutal, monotone, and steals the clothing of outcasts of the counterculture. In the first movie, it was punks. In this one, it's bikers. In the very next scene, we see our second man from the future arrive. Much like Kyle Reese in the first film, a cop notices something suspicious, and this forces the second man to defend himself against the cop. Now, Kyle in the first movie just stole the police officer's guns, but this guy also steals his clothing and the car. When we finally get a good look at this guy's face, he's staring ahead and framed in almost the exact same way John Connor was at the beginning of the movie. What this means is that if Terminator 2 is following the same path as the first, this is the man that will protect the Terminator's target. And it makes sense, too. I mean, there's this subconscious thing maybe that they're doing with his face, with John Connor's face, but beyond that, he is disguised as the cop, the good guy, and Arnold is disguised as the outlaw, the bad guy. We finally meet the young John Connor, and strangely, even though he's the heroic leader of the future, he kind of seems to be disguised as an outlaw himself, motorcycle and all. We meet Sarah Connor, and she's locked up in the nut house. Outside her room, her doctor, who happens to be the same psychologist from the first film, is explaining her crazy ideas to the group.
She believes that a machine called a Terminator was sent back through time to kill her.
That's original.
It's an interesting little acknowledgement of its own story because, these films do have a ridiculous story. When you first hear it, it sounds like it'd just be terribly cheesy, but James Cameron pulls it off, doesn't he? So our man, disguised as a cop, goes to John Connor's house in search of him. He talks with John's foster parents and does his best to be polite. It seems visits from the police looking for John is pretty common here. John hacks an ATM machine and steals money from it. Of course, the man who fights the machines in the future knew how to fight them as a child. It's an interesting little touch. As John and his friends zoom around on his dirt bike, we see that Arnold is close by, searching for him. And when he's on screen, it plays that ominous, bad guy music. Back in the insane asylum, Sarah is hoping that her good behavior will allow her to be moved to a minimum security facility so she can plan an escape. But the doctor denies her, and she lashes out. Before she attacks the doctor, though, there's this great shot of all of these cameras and screens, all of this technology surrounding Sarah, and it really cuts nicely into the next scene here, too. A scientist at a technology company examines some of the machinery that was recovered from the original Terminator. I only point this out because the scientist's name is Dyson, and I think it's a cool nod to Freeman Dyson. When searching for John Connor's exact location, Arnold finally gets a good look at his face. We see through his point of view on his little computer-screened red vision, we see that Target Acquired is flashing. Target Acquired. That doesn't sound good. After showing John's picture around, our second man from the future, the cop, finally learns that John likes to hang out at the arcade. And of course, John is at the arcade. He is playing the game Missile Defense, which I think is another little neat touch. You know, seeing as how Missile Defense is the game where you try to save the world by preventing the nukes from going off and all of that. It's a nice little Easter egg. Both the cop and Arnold are searching for John, but the cop finds him first. But John, being the troubled kid that he is, decides to run. But who does he run into around the corner? A Terminator with a shotgun. The audience already knows what that means. The Terminator follows John around the corner, aims up his shotgun at him, except he's not aiming at John. He's aiming at the cop, the real bad guy. And just like that, the twist is unveiled. Now, yes, we all know that Arnold's Terminator is a good guy in the second movie, but clearly this was meant to be a twist, and a damn good one, too. Everything in the first half of this movie points to Arnold being the bad guy. All of the music, the similar imagery, the similar pacing, it all just builds to this just beautiful moment, this amazing twist that happens in that hallway. And then, of course, later in the movie, when they rescue Sarah Connor, she has the same reaction to the Terminator that the audience just did a bit earlier. She, too, is afraid, and then, of course, the twist is unveiled to her. Again, it's just a great moment. Just like with the first movie and Kyle Reese stalking Sarah in the beginning and all of that, the second movie finds a way to confuse us about who's good and bad. Even though it was basically a retelling of the first film, it still found a way to be original. And I mean, beyond that, it's one of the most impressive action films ever made. Look, all I wanted to say with this video is that if you look at the first half of these films, if you look at the way they are paced, the way that they set up these stories, it's just, oh God, it's good. The twists are so good. It's just the problem here is that they go unappreciated because all of us already know them. And I know you appreciate these movies. Everybody appreciates these movies. They're amazing. I'm just hoping that with this video, maybe you'll learn to appreciate them a little more. All right, thanks for watching. Like this video and share it on stuff. If there's even a place to, just I don't know. Just do the things.